Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you all for today's event with His Excellency Dr. Musalia Mudavadi, Prime Cabinet Secretary and Cabinet Secretary for Foreign and Diaspora Affairs of the Republic of Kenya. Dr. Mudavadi brings extensive experience from a very long career in public service. Over the years, he had a number of senior cabinet roles, including serving as Kenya's seventh Vice President in 2002, and later as Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Local Government. And he has also served as Minister for Finance, Agriculture, Transport, and Information. So quite a long career in public service, as well as currently being the principal, one of the principals of the governing Kenyan Kwanza Alliance coalition. So a lot of experience and a lot we can talk about in this event. Very welcome, Your Excellency. Welcome back, I should say. You were here in December 2023.
That's right.
When Bronwyn hosted you here for a discussion on Kenya's foreign policy imperatives. You may remember. It's very well overdue that we have a second conversation, given how the global context has dramatically changed since you were last here. But before we begin, just a quick reminder to everyone that this session is fully on the record, which means you're very welcome to use the information as well as quote attributed to the speaker or participants. And you're very welcome to also use social media, engage on social media. You can use the hashtag #CHAfrica. For those joining us virtually, via Zoom and virtually, very welcome as well. And we want this to be as engaging as possible. So please do feel free to send your questions using the Q&A box. And we'll try to bring a selection of questions. His Excellency wants to answer as many questions as possible, wants to know what you're asking, so please keep them coming. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Okay.
15-20 minutes presentation. You're very welcome to do it sitting or from the lectern.
Okay, I'd rather stand.
Sure.
Okay. Madam Tigsti Amare, Director of the Africa Program at Chatham House and Chair of today's event. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I am grateful for your invitation to address this gathering and appreciate your warm welcome here at Chatham House in London. But of course, it's not warm outside. It is a great honor to engage with you on Africa's urgency within a rapidly mutating global geopolitical landscape. In this context, my address will focus on Kenya's expanding foreign policy interests in a changing world order and how our state is recalibrating its diplomacy to navigate the evolving global dynamics. At the onset, allow me to briefly comment on the weighty crisis confronting the Middle East and the wider world before delving into the subject of my engagement with you. I convey the condolences of the government and people of Kenya to the families of those who have been killed and comfort those who have been impacted by the unprecedented war. We also call for the protection of civilians and join the international community in urging de-escalation by the warring parties. We believe that long-standing multilateral institutions offer the only and best frameworks for resolving the violent conflict in the Middle East. Certainly, the established principles of diplomacy, including peaceful conduct of international relations, negotiations and mutual reciprocity, should now take precedence as they are more vital than ever for safeguarding global stability and advancing development for shared prosperity. Kenya has not aligned with any party in the Middle East crisis. It has consistently called for de-escalation, dialogue, multilateral engagement, and adherence to the international law. We remain a neutral and principled voice advocating for peace, restraint, humanitarian protection, and international legality. We are also focused on the safety and well-being of more than 500,000 Kenyan nationals living, working, and studying in the Middle East. The more prolonged the violence and insecurity, the more the harm, especially if traffic through the Strait of Hormuz remains blocked. Disruptions to energy supply, air travel, and trade will have greater ramifications economically and security-wise. Clearly, our region is still battling with terrorism, and it must remain vigilant during this crisis. The Middle East war, like other global crises, including COVID-19 and the Russia-Ukraine violent conflict, reinforces the need for African states to diversify supply chains, and more importantly, accelerate integration, including the full realization of the objectives of the African Continental Free Trade Area. Additionally, we must accelerate the transition to renewable energy. Let us reimagine the future. If Africa were powered by clean energy, including solar, geothermal, and hydro, would the Middle East crisis carry the same distressing impact? The overlap of the Red Sea crisis and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, which handles 20% of global oil, signals a looming crisis and potential anarchy. We appeal to the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries to help diffuse the tensions and be considerate of the looming crisis facing African countries from the impact of the Middle East war. Sudan's dire humanitarian crisis, which was drawing international attention, or at least beginning to, now risks receding into another era of a forgotten conflict as global attention shifts away to Middle East, as was the case during the Gaza and Russia-Ukraine conflicts. Now, let me get back to today's theme. My presentation is structured around three key areas. First, our understanding of the current global environment. Two, Kenya's response to the changing world order. And three, Kenya's expanding foreign policy interests. Let me begin by looking at the evolving global environment. Today, international relations stand at a historic turning point. The global balance of power is changing as new alliances emerge. All rivalries resurface, and middle as well as emerging powers continue to assert influence. Apparently, we have entered into a more complex, perilous, and contested global order. We are witnessing an international system increasingly marked by interest-driven alliances, supplanting multilateral collectivism, and geoeconomic strategies that prioritize protectionism while constraining global supply chains. Transactional calculations and militarism are eclipsing long-standing principles of diplomacy, such as peaceful coexistence, negotiations, sovereign equality, and mutual reciprocity. In the process, the foundational values of international relations, including human rights, inclusive, rule-based global order, and shared prosperity are waning. The implications of these global changes are most felt in the global south, particularly in Africa. The net effect is disrupted economic growth, escalating conflicts, a new scramble for critical minerals, and resurgence of Cold War-style geopolitics. Furthermore, democratic governance is increasingly coming under strain, marked by a troubling rise in unconstitutional changes of government. Altogether, these global trends threaten peace and security and erode Africa's hard-won economic development gains. In this moment of global turbulence, African states face a twofold strategic choice: either to transform their immense potential into strategic influence on the global stage, or to remain at the geopolitical periphery as passive actors and perpetual recipients of international assistance. Africa must deliberately transform its immense potential in technology, digital innovation, critical minerals, natural resources, and youthful population into geoeconomic influence and an assertive international voice. What is Kenya's strategic response to this changing world order? As the global environment gets more intricate, Africa must engage more in South-to-South cooperation to strengthen solidarity, advance self-reliance, and develop collective resilience against global uncertainty. For Kenya, these shifts are not abstract phenomena. They are lived realities that shape our development prospects, influence our security dynamics, and redefine the parameters of our diplomatic engagement. In response to the evolving international landscape, Kenya advocates for continental peace, promotes Pan-Africanism, advances into Africa trade, and deeper regional integration. We embrace a multi-alliance approach that balances national interests with diversified international partnerships without ascribing to competing geopolitical and ideological narratives. Kenya is simply looking for opportunities and diversifying relations in a pragmatic manner, clearly guided by our national interests. Our aim is not to take sides, but to choose mutually beneficial partnerships anchored in mutual respect and shared prosperity. Let me briefly look at our expanding foreign interests. Kenya has long served as a regional anchor state in the Horn of Africa and the Great Lakes region, as a consistent advocate of African interests on the international stage. Today, that role carries even greater responsibility, particularly due to the compelling need for champions of African agency. Furthermore, Kenya remains firmly committed to deepening integration within the East African community, a bloc of over 300 million people across 8 member states. As the largest economy in the East African community, Kenya has a vital stake in a cohesive and fully functional community. It maintains a significant trade surplus and, encouragingly, intra-African, East African trade expanded by 24.5% in the second quarter of 2025 to reach $4.6 billion. At the continental level, Kenya's diplomatic engagement prioritizes trade facilitation, infrastructure development, and connectivity, and the operationalization of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area as a vehicle for industrial growth and competitiveness. In February 2026, just last month, during the 39th Ordinary Session of the African Union Assembly, Kenya's President William Ruto underscored the importance of ensuring national policies do not become unintended barriers to continental integration. He emphasized that this is a critical moment to advance free movement of persons and build on progress already made, including the expansion of electronic travel authorization systems across Africa. Additionally, Kenya firmly supports the African Union Border Program and its aspiration for a more integrated and ultimately borderless Africa. We believe that African borders should serve as bridges rather than barriers to continental unity and cooperation. Africa must therefore consider boundary questions with far-sightedness and a spirit of cooperation, ensuring that shared resources, especially in borderlands, generate wealth and collective prosperity for our peoples rather than trigger conflict and disunity. Security remains central to our regional engagement. Kenya continues to support peace processes and mediation efforts across the Greater Horn of Africa. We hold that Africa should be at the center of its own solutions. Africa-led peace initiatives should be respected and supported as per the principle of subsidiarity. Too often, conflicts persist because international attention always fades after ceasefires, without long-term solutions. Strengthening African institutions is essential for sustainable peace. Kenya's multilateral engagements reflect our conviction that global challenges demand collective solutions, and that is why we have consistently advocated for reforms, not abandonment, of multilateral institutions. In this regard, Kenya's contribution to the multinational security support mission in Haiti underscores our belief in shared responsibility and the indivisibility of international peace and security. Our participation was guided by human solidarity and our experience in peace support operations. I wish to inform this gathering that Kenya concluded her mandate following the United Nations Security Council Resolution 2793 of 2025 that transitioned the multinational security support mission to the Gang Suppression Force. And to this end, I look forward to a final drawdown in the coming weeks and seamless transition to anchor the Gang Suppression Force takeoff in the pursuit of sustainable security for Haiti. Kenya's global positioning is further defined by diversified and strategic partnerships. We maintain deep economic and security ties with long-standing Western partners, including the United States, the United Kingdom, the European Union, among others, spanning trade, defense, cooperation, climate action, health, security, and technology. Notably, Kenya is set to jointly host the Africa Forward Summit 2026 with France in Nairobi from 11th to 12th May 2026, under the theme Africa-France Partnership for Innovation and Growth. The summit will be the first to be hosted in a non-Francophone African country. And this underscores the growing Pan-African and inclusive character of Africa's partnership with France. It will showcase Africa's innovation and talent, foster co-investment, and generate ideas to shape future industrial transformations. It is worth noting that Kenya signed the Economic Partnership Agreement with the European Union in Nairobi on 18th December 2023. This agreement came into force on 1st July 2024, granting duty-free and quota-free access for Kenyan exports to the 18 trillion euro market of the 27 member states. Also, China-Africa relations are transitioning beyond the primary focus on aid and infrastructure towards enhanced trade and investment. The announcement by China of zero tariff treatment for African countries marks an important milestone. Kenya is engaging constructively to actualize these commitments in line with other international obligations. Kenya is prioritizing local manufacturing, value addition, and technology transfer. At the annual Raisina talks in India, in which I participated before coming here, discussions focused on global realignments, including maximization of African economic and demographic potential. Historically, Europe, mainly the European Union, has been Africa's leading trading partner. But over the years, Africa's trade patterns have notably shifted, with Asian partners, mainly China and India, emerging as the main trading partners. As part of diversifying the foreign policy priorities, Kenya's partnership with the Gulf states, including the United Arab Emirates, reflects the expanding South-to-South cooperation across logistics, renewable energy, financial services, and agricultural value chains. These partnerships reinforce our commitment to a multi-directional foreign policy anchored in adaptability, diversification, and mutually beneficial partnerships. The icing on the cake is a testament of how Kenya's expanded foreign policy has contributed to its socioeconomic transformation journey, anchored on the bottom-up economic transformation agenda. Economic data show the country has stabilized since 2023 after a year of upheavals that included high inflation, foreign exchange crisis, and high costs of basic food commodities in 2022 to 2023. Growth in gross domestic product, that's the GDP, improved from 4.7% in 2024 to an estimated 5% in 2025, driven by strong recovery in construction, mining, agriculture, and tourism sectors. Inflation declined to 4.5% at the end of 2025, from a high of over 9% the previous year. Forex reserves rose earlier this month to USD 14.6 billion, a new record equivalent to 6.2 months of import cover. Expanded and diversified trade partnerships, together with high diaspora remittances that hit close to $5 billion in 2025, have helped Kenya to maintain a stable exchange rate, which has greatly improved in business confidence and economic outlook. Kenya will continue to pursue a balanced, inclusive, and progressive diplomacy in the rapidly changing complex world order. We will champion equitable economic growth, climate justice, digital transformation, and peace building. We reject the notion that African states are passive arenas for external competition. Rather, We are strategic actors capable of shaping our outcomes, building coalitions, and contributing meaningfully to global stability and prosperity. The world order may be evolving, but our commitment to responsible global citizenship remains constant. Kenya stands ready to engage, to partner, and to lead, guided by the conviction that a more representative and stable international system is both necessary and achievable. I thank you. Before I sit down, let me take the questions. Let me take this moment to just acknowledge that in our midst we have Kenya's new High Commissioner. Ambassador Maurice Makolo. He came in from Austria, so he's about a month old, 2 months old. And next to him is Ed Barnett, who's holding forth for the UK in Nairobi. Thank you for being here. I also want to really take this opportunity to acknowledge that the Foreign Secretary, Yvette Cooper, has been so gracious to us. We came in for the Commonwealth Foreign Ministers meeting, and she's run the issues very, very well. So let me take this opportunity to express Kenya's appreciation and my personal appreciation for her hospitality. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Prime Cabinet Secretary. You have taken us, thank you for that really rich presentation. You have taken us through so many issues. It's really hard to pick, but I will pick just a couple because we have a lot of people who are eager to ask many questions. Of course, Kenya has long been such an important anchor state in the region, but also an important interlocutor for the continent globally. This role becomes even more important for all the reasons that you have outlined. But it can't do it all. No few countries can do it all to really uphold the interests and priorities of the African continent, which seem to be many. You've listed some of them. We keep on talking about an African leadership, like the more cohesion, more coming together. Where is this leadership going to come from, and what is the role Kenya can help also in terms of creating that cohesion?
Well, the leadership must come from the Africans themselves. I kept on speaking to some other engagement, and I said, for instance, if we want strong multilateralism, it will be as strong as the countries that make that institution. And the strength of those countries, or that country, also depends on whether that country itself values the rule of law and engages in principle and good practices, constitutionalism and so forth. Because if we are strong as nations in terms of the proper values, then we are going to make a better global community, whether in the context of the African Union or whether in the context of the United Nations or any other entity that has a global fitting. So if you ask where will this leadership come from Africa, it must come from the Africans themselves. We have a young population. There are a lot of leading examples that we can see in terms of disruption, the conflicts, and so forth. So we really have to organize ourselves. And therefore, I just repeat, the leadership must come from the Africans themselves. It must be homegrown. And we have an opportunity. Yes.
And it's great that you mention the African youth. So, again, going back to Kenya's role as a regional stabilizer as well as an international interlocutor, but that has to face also the national pressures, the demand for jobs, economic growth. We were talking earlier about the need for improving infrastructure, the sad floods that have caused many lives, 23 or 27 in Kenya, just on the news at the moment. And so how do you balance the national calls for accountability, for delivery with that international, with that international role Kenya has?
Well, first of all, let me just say that the need for job creation is absolutely paramount. As I said in my remarks, when you look at the demographics, the urgent pressure is from the younger population, better equipped, better networked. So we have to have policies that will rapidly address and focus on this particular challenge or opportunity or advantage that we have as a continent. So for Kenya, looking at how do we create jobs, technology is one way. We want to leverage a lot on technology. For instance, if we were to get the young people back to agriculture and food production, you must add a sweetener, and the sweetener is technology. If you give them an opportunity to utilize their innovative capacity and the requisite technology, they are likely then to find interest in that kind of direction. So that is one key lever. We have to invest in good governance. Kenya, for instance, recently we took a bold step and working with the IMF, we decided to have a governance diagnostic so that we can look at how we are managing ourselves, get a third, an independent eye to look at our systems and how we are performing. And from there, we can see where we are going wrong and what corrective areas. So governance becomes an issue so that we are able to deal with corruption, wastage, and that objective third eye is very, very important for us to look at where we are going. We also have been subscribing to peer review mechanisms, both in the context of the African Union and in other entities, so that we have clear room to reflect on whether our policies are having the desired impact or they're not. Then we have to direct our resources to the critical areas of infrastructure, health, education. So to me, that becomes critical. Then job creation, we are having pressure as a country. That is why we have critical programs like the affordable housing that is taking place in Kenya today, because there's a huge deficit in housing. But we have established a housing levy, and there's an accelerated program to deal with that deficit, but at the same time making sure that there's a lot of local content to be inputted into this program so that we can assist in generating jobs. The third component is really to deal with how we can encourage Kenyans to also have an opportunity outside. So we've been signing up to bilateral labor agreements with some of our partners. And I quoted a figure, for instance, in the Middle East, we have close to 500,000 Kenyans out there working. And there are others who wish to engage in other countries. We have to do it, and we have to do it in a structured manner, because we're also facing situations where, in certain instances, not the majority, but a few instances where we are also getting distress calls of Kenyans who have landed into trouble in other parts of the world. So I could go on and on, but I just wanted to pick a few, but to really acknowledge that the need for job creation is paramount for us.
Thank you. Well, let's go to our audience now. It's your opportunity to ask questions. Please do raise your hand, and we'll try to get 2 or 3 at a time, so that we have an opportunity to get. Okay, I'll start the gentleman next to you, Georgia. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Johnny Oates, member of the House of Lords and co-chair of our all-party parliamentary group on Africa, also CEO of a not-for-profit called United Against Malnutrition and Hunger. Thank you for your excellent presentation. There's so many questions I'd love to ask you, but I'll be disciplined. Could you just give us an assessment, your assessment of current state of UK-Kenyan relations, and what are the things you think the UK could do most effectively to develop effective partnerships with furtherly effective partnerships with Kenya and other countries on the continent? Thanks.
Thank you. This second person here. The lady. No, the lady was on.
Hi, Ruyan Liu from King's College London. I'm just wondering that how the outbreak of South Sudan's internal conflict would affect Kenya's leadership or contribution to the regional peace. Thank you.
Yeah, and finally, the right.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Mudavadi. First of all, I should acknowledge as your recognition as someone who's been a peacemaker and a uniting figure in the Kenyan political discourse, especially after the sudden death of Raila Odinga. So thank you for that. My name is Shemi. I'm a lawyer based in London, New York. I've specialized in international law, but also a journalist. But I have a special place in Kenya because my wife is Kenyan, and I'm originally from Uganda, so I know the area very well. Mm-hmm. Just a couple of points. One is that...
Just questions.
Yeah, questions, yes.
Just one question, please.
Yes. You've touched on human rights. There's and the presence of around 500,000 Kenyans in the Middle East, but there are more millions coming from East Africa. So do you have a coordinated position to repatriate East Africans in the region? And what's your assessment of the current state of human rights in the region as well, given that Kenya has historically been a refuge for those who are oppressed? And finally, do you have a common position for AI?
No, sorry.
I'm concluding. Do you have a common position on AI development and investment in East Africa? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just to add to that, there were questions also coming virtually on the question of human rights and civil society engagement in Kenya, and the concern that perhaps the freedom that Kenyans enjoyed for a very long time is eroding. So if you can include that in your comments as well.
Okay. First, let me just start with our partnership with the United Kingdom. I think it's in very good shape. We've had recently fairly high-level engagements. As I speak, not too long ago, His Majesty the King was visiting Kenya. And I had the opportunity to actually chaperone him during that visit. And I can assure you that we had a very good conversation. Later, President William Ruto was here, and he engaged with the Prime Minister at number 10 Downing Street. I was there. And the conversation focused on how to consolidate and actually elevate the partnership to a strategic level. So that is really an indication that we are having good relations. As I leave here this afternoon, I have an engagement with UKEF because the UK we are working together so that we can modernize the Nairobi Railway. So there's a big program we want to actualize, to model Nairobi's railway city to what we have seen around King's Cross. And this is a program that is being supported through our partnership with the UK. Apart from that, we continue to cooperate on matters security, in whether defense and even exchange of capacity building issues. So I can only say that we are solid in our relationship. I would be happy to know if somebody thinks otherwise, but I believe we are on good cause. The issue of South Sudan, I would immediately say yes, if the stability and the well-being of South Sudan is extremely crucial to us. Kenya has for many years harbored our brothers and sisters from South Sudan when they have been in turmoil and had challenges. So as we speak today, for instance, we still have almost 300,000 refugees from that country in Kakuma, which is part of the northern Kenya, which borders South Sudan. And therefore, we really hope that as we go towards the end of the year, they are programmed to have elections. Our appeal on behalf of the people there and really even on behalf of the many citizens in the Horn of Africa is to say that we should encourage South Sudan to go through an all-inclusive process and have free and fair elections. And I say inclusive so that all key players are brought on board. That is the only way they can guarantee peace as they move forward. We've been having initiatives like the Tumaini mediation process. It's stalled, but through dialogue, we are hoping that this can be reopened so that South Sudan can be okay. So it is worrisome, but we can only appeal at this stage that all good voices should be targeted at Juba and to encourage them to really manage this process effectively. South Sudan is also suffering from the conflict in Sudan. They are also taking on refugees from the conflict in Sudan. So here's a country that is going through a difficult process, but they're also beginning to take people fleeing from another crisis. So that needs to be managed. But for Sudan, since they became a state, it's now 16 years. So they're preparing for the election, the first time that they'll have an election. And it's important that they're encouraged to do so peacefully. There was something about
it was on
the human rights
situation.
Human rights situation. I think for Kenya, I really want to say that there's an exaggeration as to whether there are those violations. I'm not saying that a country is 100% free, but if you look at the civil society in Kenya, we have about 14,000 registered civil society groups. 14,000. The largest in the entire region. And we have a record of that. We were able to change the law, and we have a public benefits act which was negotiated and agreed with the civil society. So there's a proper legal regime governing the civil society as a whole. And I can assure you that Kenya respects the law, respects human rights, and protects them. And our judicial system is one of the most robust in this kind of situation. Nobody is spared. Even the government of Kenya is not spared. If there's an issue where there's a genuine belief that there's a violation of human rights. So we engage fully. We are also members of the Human Rights Council in Geneva. We've been a member for the last 3 years. We've had visitations. We've been criticized, but we have responded where the response has been. And for whatever it is worth, we have also had a mission in Haiti for the last 2 years of our police. And there's been barely any complaint about a human rights violation by our police, even in the peacekeeping effort. That perhaps should be able to help us understand that we will not condone any violations. And where there has been a transgression, the judicial process is very strong. Yeah.
Well, thank you. We'll go for a second.
There's the AI thing.
The AI,
yeah.
maybe we can fold in the next
Yes,
round.
I think you have a point there that the governance structure in this space needs to be coordinated. And one mechanism is within the East African community. But also within the continent, the African Union, we are all trying to make sure that as a continent we can have some positive understanding so that we can benefit from technology. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll go with the lady here.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hi, CS. First of all, I want to thank you so much for your diaspora diplomacy, particularly with the consulate in Jeddah and new footprints in Abidjan and Rabat. In terms of climate action, as Kenya is advancing its flagship initiatives such as the Nairobi Declaration and the African Renewable Energy Strategy to position itself as a global climate leader, what specific policy investments, instruments are we going for, and regulatory reforms as well as financing mechanisms to support this? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Musalia. I'm originally from Sierra Leone. Adams Benguru is my name. Earlier on your opening, you spoke about Kenya having attracted over $5 billion in terms of remittances. I'm much more concerned with that. What is it that Kenya has done so well in to have attracted that much money that the rest of the other Africa continent countries aren't doing so well in? What advice would Kenya provide to them?
Good afternoon, Honourable Cabinet Secretary. My name is Ross Bailey. I work for a charity called Malaria No More. You remarked on the crisis in the Middle East and the paralysing effect that's beginning to have. 6 years ago, we were having a similar paralysing effect, but globally due to COVID. I was interested on what Kenya's ambitions are around health diplomacy, particularly around sovereignty of supply chain for health, and if you were willing to make any remarks on how you think the continent can deal with the changing nature of the support from the United States.
Okay. Over to you. There are many other questions coming through as well, virtually, which I don't think we'll have time because you have to be out of here at 2 o'clock on the dot. And
Okay, but
you know,
I'll try and just...
many of the questions are around Gen Z, human rights, which you have addressed, and multilateralism, especially in terms of Haiti. The climate issue has just come as well, but the Global South Agency, and how do you bring the Global South together in terms of as a response to the geopolitical context? So,
yeah, first of all, let me just quickly try and touch on the climate issue. After the conference in Nairobi, Kenya remains the champion. President Ruto is the chair of the African Union initiative on matters climate. And therefore, we are looking at apart from the regulatory and the necessary legal framework, which we are trying to harmonize continentally, there's also deep insight that is going into the financing mechanisms around green funding, aspects of carbon credits and so forth. That regulatory framework is being worked on. So, but I would be happy to spend a little more time and send some more detail on that particular question. On the remittances, Kenyans, first of all, have a very interesting characteristic. Somehow, wherever they go, they save something for their kinsmen at home. So as they engage, they have been funding either investment or looking at social support and so forth. And these are the remittances that go back. But we've now started trying to help them by creating instruments and opportunities for them to invest part of that money. Because as it comes, by the way, I keep reminding them, people, that when the $5 billion come or thereabout, they're not coming to Kenya's treasury. You know, there's this mistaken notion that this is money going into the national treasury. It's not going to the national treasury. These are remittances that find their way into the economy, but they are directed at the family members and the private investments of these Kenyans, wherever they are. And that's how the multiplier effect then benefits the economy. But we are trying to look at instruments like this morning, earlier on, President Ruto signed the bill that has created the infrastructure fund. Right? So this is a mechanism where now you can invest both private capital and some seed money that will come from the exchequer and privatization proceeds in Kenya into an infrastructure fund. And this will be open for capital from outside, including capital from Kenyans who may wish to be part of this this process. We want them to invest in housing. We want them to be able to help us modernize Nairobi Airport. That is the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. So these are investment opportunities that we now want to put out to our people so that these resources can be part of that process. On the health program, giving the example of the COVID that you've just touched on, that was an eye-opener for very many people on the African continent. By sheer coincidence, President Ruto again is the champion of pharmaceutical manufacturing. on the continent, working with the African Union, CDC. These are initiatives that are being driven under the African Union umbrella. And key to this is to see how we can scale up manufacturing of pharmaceuticals on the African continent, so that we hedge ourselves against any potential risks like the ones we experienced during the COVID situation. So this is, and we call for partnerships here so that we can work together.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, this is all the time that we have left because you have to go to a service at 2:30 shortly. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Please do join me in thanking the Prime Cabinet Secretary.